In Idaho, police say a body pulled from a local canal, the New York Canal, is the approximate age and size of the missing local boy, Robert Manwill.
A citizen called police dispatch after seeing a body floating in the New York Canal near Cloverdale Road, just north of Deer Flat Road. As Ada County deputies were responding, another citizen reported also seeing a body floating just west of the initial location. The first Ada County deputy responded to the citizen sighting, saw the body floating, jumped into the canal, and pulled the body out of the canal as it flows just east of Deer Flat Road and Stewart Road, east of Cuna. I can tell you the body is that of a young boy, approximately the same age and size as Robert Manwill.
The 8-year-old vanished on July 24th under what police call suspicious circumstances.
The sheriff's office and the police department, they tell me as of now there are no other known missing people or missing children cases here locally, aside from little Robert Manwill.
We have received word from the Ada County Coroner's Office that a tentative identification has been made of the body found in the New York Canal as that of 8-year-old Robert Manwill.
I'm Jean Casares of the Legal Network in session in for Nancy Grace tonight. We are receiving word from Boise, Idaho tonight that the body of a small little boy has been found floating in a canal in Boise, Idaho. The office of the coroner is saying cause of death unknown, manner of death unknown, place of death unknown at this point. Let's go out to Greg Hahn, editor of the Idaho Statesman. Greg, take us to Boise right now so we can visualize it. The canal where this little body was found, tentatively identified as Robert Manwill. Where is the canal or an entrance to the canal from the apartment that Robert was last seen, and where was that as opposed to where the body was found in the canal?
The entrance and the place where he was found are pretty far away. It would take you half an hour to go there, especially if there was traffic, maybe even longer. It's probably a 15-mile drive, and it's about that long in the water. About 18 miles, we've been told by the canal company. To get there from that apartment, it's less than half a mile. You'd have to go up a pretty steep hill. It kind of runs through Boise on the top of a hill, and then it kind of winds its way around the valley. This used to be a big agricultural valley. In fact, it still is, but it's grown dramatically over the last 100 years, and certainly in the last couple of decades. And it's a big, powerful canal that feeds thousands of acres of farmland even now. And the canal company people say, it's possible that something could go that far.
So it's a big, powerful canal. The entrance to the canal that's closest to where the apartment was, is it something that a little boy could just walk up to and start to play in? Or is it something that has gates or fences around it?
That's a pretty good question, and I haven't really walked around myself up there. The canals come through town, and some places they're easy to get to, and other places they're really cordoned off pretty heavily. And this one actually comes under the street, so it really is an urban part of town. If you didn't find a place there, you could wander around and find a spot. It probably wouldn't be the easiest thing to get to. They really don't want people in there. There are stretches they try to keep everybody out of. But, anything's possible. I was an 8-year-old boy once.
Sure, and I think we've been seeing some pictures of that canal in Boise, Idaho. To Dr. Marty McCary, MD, physician, professor of public health at Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C. When a body has been in water for an extended period of time, and we don't know how long the body was in water at this point, can you still find DNA, or has that washed off?
Oftentimes there is DNA, actually, especially when there's been misconduct involving a body orifice. Body fluids will be checked for DNA, and in fact they'll actually look within any clothing that's in the person to look for any DNA evidence.
Well, doctor, this body was found because it was floating. When a body enters water, does it go down to the base of a canal first and then rise, and when does that rising take place?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people wonder, do dead bodies float or sink? And actually they do both. They sink, and at a certain point the density will actually change based on the air in the lungs, and the bodies will then surface later, either hours or days later.
During an autopsy, can you determine how long a body was in water, or do you need to bring in a forensic specialist to determine that?
Usually within the first 24 hours, you can nail it down to a series of hours, a 6-hour window. When you get a week out, which it may have been in this situation, usually you can get as close to a couple days. The further out you go, the more wide the window of specificity.
Okay, and we want to tell everybody a forensic dentist is being called in to examine. To Dana in Virginia. Hi, Dana. Good evening. What's your question?
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
I love the show. And my question is, where is Robert's mother? And couldn't she be brought down to the coroner's office to ID the body? Or would they, if she was willing to, or would they consider that?
Boy, that's a great question. What an obvious great question. To Greg Hahn out at the Idaho Statesman, joining us from Boise, Idaho. What about that? Has the mother been taken to the coroner's office?
If she has, we haven't been told about it. But I would say that I don't think the coroner would have released the tentative ID if they didn't have a pretty good visual confirmation. I think they, depending on where this goes, they want to have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed, and I think that's why they're taking this extra time. But we've never seen, at least from our coroner here, a kind of interim identification. That would indicate to me that they've got a pretty strong idea that they do have the right ID.
I think you're right. That does make sense. To Kathy in South Carolina. Good evening, Kathy. Your question.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking my call. Have they released whether or not there was fluid found in little Robert's lungs?
They have not released any of that. To Dr. Marty McCary, what does that mean if fluid is found in the lungs of this boy, or would it naturally be found because he was in the water?
Actually, the absence of fluid in the lungs often indicates a struggle or something that would cause a spasm of the epiglottis to sort of seal off the lung as an air space. So the absence of fluid often indicates a struggle.
Very interesting. To Tamara Holder, defense attorney out of New York, there are no suspects in this case. There are no persons of interest. It is not known the cause of death. But Robert's mother has pleaded guilty already to a domestic violence child abuse issue with one of her children, bashing the head's skull of another child into a hard object. If you were an attorney in the area, do you believe that she is someone that should seek counsel at this time, or not unless approached by law enforcement?
Well, I think anybody who's a person of interest or could be a person of interest should always have legal counsel. But I don't think that we should focus on the mother's past conduct right now. There's too much information that is directly linked to this boy missing. We have a bloodhound. We have 120 sex offenders in a 2-mile radius. We have 3 different locations. We have where he was found. We have this backyard. We have where he lived. So, and focusing on the mother's past conduct with another child is not important right now. It may be in the future, but not now.
All right. To Leslie Austin, psychotherapist, what is this family going through right now?
Well, there's no way they're going through anything other than hell. Whether anybody from the family is implicated or not, it's still devastating for different reasons. We have to assume, until we know differently, that this family is just going through a horrifying loss. And this is no closure for them. This is just the beginning of the grieving process. And some people never get over it.
Absolutely horrifying. Are you Nancy Grace's #1 fan? Get your video cameras, your email.